Welcome back. Tonight's story is about a man who worked 14-hour shifts for 9 years, came home to an empty bank account and a sticky note calling him worthless, and then waited 8 months before mailing one envelope to her new boyfriend's office. Pour the coffee. Stay close. My wife took every dollar we had and left a note on the fridge. 8 months later, I let one piece of mail enter. My name is Daniel Kovac. I am 46 years old. I have worked as an aerospace machinist in Wichita, Kansas for 22 years. I run a 5-axis mill on the night shift at a plant out by the river, and I am very good at my job. I am good because I am patient. I measure twice. I cut once. I do not rush, and I do not miss. On the night this story begins, I came home at 6:14 in the morning after a 14-hour shift. My back hurt the way it always hurt. The kitchen smelled like the coffee my wife made the morning before, gone cold and sour in the pot. The house was too quiet. Our dog Rusty did not come to the door. Her car was not in the driveway. And on the refrigerator, under the little magnet shaped like a sunflower we bought in Branson the year we got married, there was a yellow sticky note in her handwriting. I stood there in my work boots holding my lunch bag, and I read that note 3 times before my brain accepted what my eyes were seeing. I did not yell. I did not throw anything. I just sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from me. I did not know it yet, but the envelope I would mail to a stranger 8 months later would do more damage in one afternoon than 9 years of marriage ever did to me. If your gut already tells you what was on that note, tell me in the comments. I want to see how many of us saw it from a mile away. We met in 2016 at a wedding I did not want to attend. My cousin Robbie was marrying a woman his mother did not like, and I had been roped in as a groomsman because Robbie said I was the only person in the family who would not make a scene. I was 36. I had been divorced for 2 years from a quiet, decent woman named Karen who told me the night she left that I was a good man and a boring one, and that she was tired of being lonely in the same room as somebody. I did not argue. She was right. Her name was Megan Holloway. She was 31 with dark blonde hair she wore in a low ponytail, and she worked in medical billing for a clinic over in Andover. She caught me out by the parking lot at the reception, smoking a cigarette I had not smoked in 6 years, and she laughed at me. Not in a mean way. In the way a woman laughs when she has decided she is going to talk to you whether you like it or not. She told me she liked men who worked with their hands. She told me her father had been a welder in Tulsa before he died. She told me she had been alone for a long time and was tired of pretending she liked it. Within 4 months, we were living together. Within 14 months, we were married at the courthouse on a Tuesday, with Robbie and his new wife as our witnesses, and a lunch afterward at a barbecue place on West Maple. The first 3 years were fine. Not happy the way the movies are happy. Fine the way a Tuesday in October is fine. We bought a small ranch house off Hillside for $142,000 in 2019. I worked nights. She worked days. We had Rusty, the dog she picked out from a shelter in Darby, a black lab mix with one white paw. On Sundays, I cooked eggs. On Wednesdays, she made meatloaf. We had a joint checking account at the credit union by the plant, because I had grown up with parents who shared everything and I did not know there was any other way to do it. I should have noticed the warning signs sooner. There were 2 I think about every day now. The first was the way she talked about her ex-husband. His name was Cody. She had been married to him for 2 years in her 20s, and every time his name came up she would say, in that flat voice some women use when they are explaining a lesson, that he had learned the hard way not to underestimate her. I asked her once gently what that meant. She smiled and said, "You do not want to know, Danny." I did not push. I should have pushed. The second was the envelope. In the spring of 2022, I came home and found a long white envelope on the kitchen counter addressed to her, with a return address from the Department of the Treasury in Ogden, Utah. I asked her about it. She picked it up, smiled the same smile, and told me it was old news from before we met. She told me her accountant was handling it. She told me not to worry my pretty head. I never saw that envelope again. I assumed she shredded it. I was wrong about that too. Beat 2 of this story is the part I am most ashamed of, because it was so small I almost missed it. In January of 2025, Megan came home from work one Friday and told me she had been thinking about our finances. She said we should consolidate. She said it was silly to have my paycheck going into one account, and her smaller paycheck going into a savings account she barely touched. She said it would be simpler if everything ran through the joint checking, and she would handle the bills, because I worked nights, and she did not want me sitting on the phone with the gas company on my one day off. She made me dinner that night. Pork chops, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can with bacon in them, the way her grandmother used to make. She poured me a beer. She sat across from me and held my hand on the table, and she said, "Danny, I want us to be a real team. I want us to stop living like roommates with a dog." I cried a little. I am not proud of that. I cried because I had been waiting 9 years for her to say something like that, and I did not know how starved I had been until she fed me. The next Monday, I went to the credit union on my lunch break, and I signed the forms. Everything went into the joint account: my direct deposit, my emergency savings, the tax refund from the year before, $87,412 by the end of the week. She kissed me on the forehead that Friday and called me her good man. 2 months later, the chair across from me at the kitchen table was empty. The night I found the note was March 14th, 2025. A Friday. It had rained the day before, and the driveway still had puddles in the low spots where the asphalt had cracked. I remember the smell of wet concrete and the smell of that cold coffee. I remember the sound of the refrigerator humming, because there was no other sound in the house. Rusty was gone. Her clothes were gone from the closet. Her toothbrush was gone from the holder by the sink. Her grandmother's china, the set she had inherited and kept wrapped in newspaper in the hall closet, was gone. Even the framed photograph of us at the courthouse, the one she had insisted we hang in the hallway, was gone. She had taken the frame and left the nail. The note read, in her round looping handwriting, "I cannot do this anymore. You are a kind man, Danny, but kind is not enough. I needed a husband, not a tired old machinist who smelled like coolant and fell asleep on the couch. I have met someone who sees me. The account is empty. Do not call. You will be fine. You always are. Megan." There was a postscript at the bottom. 3 words, in slightly smaller letters, like she had added them after she had already capped the pen. "You are worthless." I sat at that table until the sun came up. I did not call anyone. I did not cry. I did not even take off my boots. I drank a glass of water at some point. I remember that, because I remember the way the glass felt cold against my teeth, and I remember thinking that the cold was the only thing in the world I could still feel. Around 8 in the morning, I stood up, walked into the hallway, looked at the nail where the photograph used to hang, and I made a decision. I would not chase her. I would not beg her. I would not even ask her where she had gone. I would wait. I called the credit union at 9. The teller, a young woman named Brittany, was very kind. She told me the account had been drained on Wednesday afternoon. 2 cashier's checks, both to Megan personally. $87,000 even. There was $412 left in the account, which I assume she left so it would not auto-close. Brittany asked me, in the careful voice tellers use when they already know the answer, if I had authorized the withdrawal. I told her no. She put me on hold. She came back and told me very gently that because it was a joint account and Megan was a signer, there was nothing the credit union could do. She told me she was sorry. She told me it happened more than I would think. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in the recliner Megan had picked out from a furniture store in Derby, and I stared at the ceiling. And then I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was go to work. Here is what stopped me from falling apart. A man at the plant named Walter Briggs. Walter was 68 years old, 3 years past retirement, still running a lathe on the night shift because his wife had died of cancer in 2019 and he could not stand the quiet of his house. Walter saw my face the next Monday and he did not ask. He just walked over to my station around 3 in the morning, set a thermos of coffee on my tool chest, and stood there for a long minute. Then he said in his low gravel voice, "Son, You have got the look of a man who just found out his wife had been lying to him for a long time. You want to talk, or you want to work? I told him I wanted to work. He nodded. He came back at lunch and sat across from me in the break room. He did not say anything for a while. Then he said one sentence that changed the shape of my life. He said, "Daniel, I have been on this earth a long time, and I have learned that women like the one I think you married, they do not just leave. They run. And when somebody runs, it is because there is something behind them. You go home tonight and you find out what she was running from. You do not call her. You do not warn her. You just find it. And then you wait. If you have ever had somebody quietly tell you the truth at exactly the moment you needed it, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know I am not alone in this." I went home that morning. I made myself eggs. I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and I started looking. I am a machinist, not a detective, but I am patient, and I am very good at finding small things in large piles. I had access to our old tax returns because I had filed them every year. I had access to the file cabinet in the spare bedroom because she had never bothered to lock it. And I had 9 years of mail in a banker's box in the garage because I am the kind of man who keeps everything for 7 years in case the IRS ever calls. It took me 3 weekends. By the end of the 3rd weekend, I had a folder. A real folder with a green tab, the kind I used to use for tooling specs at work. Inside that folder was a copy of a notice from the Internal Revenue Service, dated August of 2021, addressed to Megan Holloway, in her maiden name, at an address in Tulsa I had never seen before. It was a notice of federal tax lying. The amount was $61,483. The tax years were 2015, 2016, and 2017 before we ever met. There was a second document from 2023, showing that the lien had been refiled and was now closer to $74,000 with penalties and interest. There was a third document, the one she thought she had hidden, the long white envelope from Ogden, Utah, which I found taped to the bottom of a drawer in the spare bedroom where she kept her sewing kit. She had not paid her taxes for 3 years before she met me. She had been hiding from the federal government the entire time we were married, and the $87,000 she took out of our joint account was, almost to the dollar, what she needed to pay it off and disappear clean. Except she did not pay it off. She had run instead, which meant the lien was still active, which meant that wherever she went, and whoever she went with, the federal government was going to find her eventually. I closed the folder. I put it in the gun safe in the closet on top of the deed to the house. I did not call a lawyer. I did not call the IRS. I did not call her mother. I went back to work the next Monday and I started waiting. I learned where she was within a month, because Wichita is not a big town, and Megan has never been good at being quiet. She had moved in with a man named Brent Ashcraft. He was 41, divorced, 2 kids in middle school, a regional sales manager for a heating and cooling supply company out of Kansas City with a branch office on East Kellogg. He drove a white pickup with a chrome toolbox. He had a house in a new development in Mays with a 3-car garage and a basketball hoop in the driveway. He had no idea who he had let into his bed. I did not contact him. I did not contact her. I went to work. I paid my mortgage from the $412 she had left me, and the next paycheck, and the next. I sold the recliner. I sold the framed prints she had picked out. I adopted a tabby cat from the shelter in Darby, the same shelter where she had picked Rusty, and I named him Walter, after my friend at the plant. I let Walter sleep at the foot of my bed. I started running again. I lost 14 pounds. I learned slowly that the house was not haunted. It was just quiet. And quiet, it turned out, was something I could live with. 8 months after the note on the refrigerator, on a Tuesday in November of 2025, I came home from work and the long white envelope from Ogden. Utah was still sitting in my gun safe, taped to a piece of cardboard, the way I had left it. I took it out. I made a fresh copy of the entire folder at the print shop on Douglas. I put the copy in a manila envelope, plain, no return address. I addressed it, in block letters, to Mr. Brent Ashcraft, care of his employer's branch office on East Kellogg, marked personal and confidential. I drove to the post office at 2:14 in the afternoon. I paid for certified mail with a return receipt. I drove home. I fed Walter. I went to bed at 9 and I slept for 10 hours, which I had not done since I was a child. I never sent her a single message. I never confronted her. I did not need to. If you have stayed with me until now, thank you. Tell me in the comments which part of this story stayed with you the most. The return receipt came back on the following Monday, signed by a receptionist named Kayla. I assume Brent opened it at his desk on his lunch break, the way men open mail at work. I assume he read the IRS notice first, then the lien refiling, then the bank statements from her old Tulsa accounts I had also tucked in there, the ones that showed the cash withdrawals from before our wedding. I assume he read the postscript I had paperclipped to the top of the folder, which was not from me. It was a photocopy of her sticky note, the one she had left on my refrigerator, the one that called me worthless. I had not written a single word of my own. I had just let her own handwriting introduce her to the man she had run to. I found out from Robbie 3 weeks later that Brent had moved her out of his house on a Saturday morning. He had not yelled. He had not made a scene. He had simply put her 2 suitcases on the driveway, handed her the keys to her own car, and told her he did not date women who lied about money. Her grandmother's china, the set she had taken from my hall closet, was in a cardboard box on the lawn. The frame from the courthouse photograph was on top of it. She had nowhere to go. Her mother in Tulsa would not take her. Her sister in Bartlesville had stopped speaking to her years before. She rented a room in a duplex over by the old fairgrounds. The IRS, I heard later through a mutual friend, had garnished her wages by the end of January. She called me once, in February of 2026, from a number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail. She did not leave a message. She has not called again. I want to talk to my younger self for a minute. I want to talk to the man at the kitchen table that March morning, holding the lunch bag, reading the yellow note for the 3rd time. I want to tell him that the woman who wrote that postscript did not know what worthless meant. Worthless is not a tired machinist who comes home at 6 in the morning and still remembers to refill the dog's water bowl. Worthless is the person who looks at a man like that and decides his patience is a weakness she can rob. I want to tell him that the quiet he is afraid of, the quiet of the empty house, is going to become the most valuable thing he owns. I want to tell him that he is not going to chase her. He is not going to yell. He is going to measure twice. He is going to cut once. And one Tuesday afternoon, almost a year from now, he is going to mail a single envelope, and the woman who called him worthless is going to learn what her own handwriting is worth. I am still on the night shift. Walter Briggs retired last spring. The cat sleeps at the foot of my bed. The house is quiet, and the quiet is mine.